Share it.
Cool. All right. Well, we're officially live on Facebook and YouTube.
Share it.
Okay, we're broadcasting both of our faces now, so
we're officially live.
no more swearing, please,
on
Ari.
Facebook and
Oh,
Now, just quickly before I welcome and introduce my guest and my friend, Coach Ari Gorney, for everyone who's tuning in, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, if you send me a message in any of those chat rooms, I'm going to be able to see your message, and I can ask Ari a question for you during the interview. What tends to happen in these interviews is that people start listening. They don't ask questions until the very end, which is fine. We'll have question time at the end too, but you are more than welcome to ask a question while we're talking, and I'll try squeeze it in as we go. I think that's a really good way to make this interview feel a little bit more interactive at the same time. Now, having said that, Coach Ari, our guest this evening, man, I don't know who I was more excited for, Braulio Estima or to have such a dear friend on the stream. I've known Ari now for maybe 7 years. I don't want to talk about myself too much, but of course, I know Ari through an interpersonal connection, right? I got to train with him. I got to be inspired by him, watch his jiu-jitsu journey. It's a bit different to watching a world champion. So very happy to have Ari here. Met at Gracie Barra Bondi. He's traveled to Japan, taught in Japan, trained in Japan, fought and won competitions in Japan. Ari, is there anything you'd like to say before I start barraging you with questions, bro?
first and foremost, it's just awesome to see so many different communities coming on this chat, and I think that's like a theme I'm going to touch on a lot during this chat. We've got like people from Carlton, Bondi, people who I train here in Melbourne. I think a few of my friends are on the YouTube one from Japan, and lots of people here who don't even train jiu-jitsu as well. So it's amazing to see so many different walks of life coming onto this chat, and just want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to this conversation. Just one thing, I'm going to just mention as well, this is going to be a PG chat.
Yes.
We've got some children listening, so let's keep everything a bit
Yes.
PG.
Correct. True to form, Ari
Yeah.
Gorney, the gentleman. Terrific.
This guy.
Alrighty. Look, we're here to talk a lot about, jiu-jitsu and whatever other parts of your life that jiu-jitsu intersects with, of course. But who is the Ari Gorney that turned up to a jiu-jitsu gym when he began? Maybe you can give us like a really quick breakdown of did you grow up in Sydney, or your experiences with sports or martial arts up to that point?
Yeah, so I first started doing jiu-jitsu actually in the start of 2013. So I'll explain that in a second. But before I came to jiu-jitsu, no martial arts experience, nothing, boxing, nothing, never stepped into a gym. I always didn't really like going to the gym. I felt like I wanted to learn concrete skills, right? And I felt like going to the gym, I wasn't attaining that. So I didn't really do much of like martial arts or anything of that nature. So the impetus before that was in around 2010, I started watching UFC. Because if you don't know me, I'm a big pro wrestling fan. Like really, really, really big pro wrestling fan. So when Brock Lesnar went to the UFC in 2008, 2009, I want to say, I started watching.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of learned more about martial arts through that avenue. And then I signed up to my first jiu-jitsu gym in January 2013. And it was in a Gracie Bar, actually. So I can touch on that in a bit.
Yes. Maybe two questions I have. How come you're such a big pro wrestling fan? Is that just from being a kid and you loved pro wrestling, or where did that come from?
Oh my gosh, I started watching like in 2005, and if anyone knows me, like I was like obsessed. I was like a 14-year-old obsessed with pro wrestling. I watched it on Fox 8. I remember like after school 3:30 on Wednesday. If anyone on the chat, you know what I'm talking about, if you're also a pro wrestling fan, jump on, watch Raw. And yeah, I just love the larger than life characters. I love the soap opera. I love the athleticism. It was like it really, like I don't know. I just had a really strong connection to it. It was cool. I thought it was cool at the time. Yeah, and then I watched a lot in the past, and then I saw Brock Lesnar and a lot of guys who has some MMA experience, and that's where I shifted to UFC
Right.
as well.
And then once you started watching UFC, what was the hook which drew you to jiu-jitsu, right? Because obviously UFC is mixed martial arts. You could just as well have
Yeah.
walked into a kickboxing school. Why jiu-jitsu?
Well, it seemed like a lot of the guys in the UFC who had like a really good wrestling base, a really good jiu-jitsu base, were the ones who were dominating at the time, right?
It's true.
So I felt like that's an avenue I wanted to take. The other reason was it felt like a lot of the smaller people who I really connect to were using jiu-jitsu to their advantage. And you
Mm.
can look back at or at many of the early practitioners who were able to overcome their obstacles through really good jiu-jitsu and really good technique. So that's what attracted to me. I felt like I didn't really need to use muscle. I could just use really, really good technique, and a strong emphasis to that.
Yes.
The other thing I probably should mention is I also started listening to the Joe Rogan Experience around this time. I actually, one thing I'm really proud of, I actually was one of the first listeners of his podcast. I think episode 30 I started.
Whoa, that
So
is early, bro.
right at the beginning. So, and then, yeah, he had it was really
How did
interesting
you?
there.
I didn't think I heard about the Joe Rogan podcast till he was like at least in the hundreds, maybe, right? When he really
I
started to
think,
blow up.
yeah, I think it was my brother Nathan. He probably mentioned it to me.
Shout
I
out Nathan
think,
Gorney.
yeah, he's on it somewhere. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, and then yeah, I joined my first jiu-jitsu gym in January 2013.
Mm. Can you tell us about
Yeah,
that school, your experiences there before coming to Bondi?
yeah. So that gym, the gym was called the Dojo and it was based in Bonnet Junction, and it actually doesn't exist anymore. It stopped running in 2015, but no, maybe a bit later, 2016. But I joined that gym in 2013, January 2013. So that was about 3 months before GB Bondi opened its doors.
Mm.
So I think I just saw a sign. I was like, oh, I want to try it out. And I just saw the sign. And I think like the word dojo probably just like attracted me. It's like, "Ooh, dojo."
Some good
I,
marketing.
and I'll briefly talk about that because it wasn't a good experience. It wasn't a really good experience
Yes.
for me. And it goes back to what Sash was talking about 3 weeks ago. Someone asked a really good question to Professor Sash, and they asked him, "How do you know if you can find a good jiu-jitsu gym?" And his answer was really true. You look at the lineage, and someone who first came into jiu-jitsu, like really fresh. I went to this gym, and I walked in, and there was a brown belt and a black belt. The brown belt name is Dave Brookshank or Brookbanks. He teaches at USC gym at the moment, and then black belt was, I'm not going to mention his name, but
Tactical.
he just sat in. Yeah, yeah. But I think if you're in this chat, you might. Yeah, he just sat in the corner, right?
Right.
And the brown belt would teach all the classes.
Right.
And I remember in the first week, I already started doing rolls, and I was just new, right? And I was getting beaten up, right? Just smashed, and I didn't even know how to break for all those really important basics which we emphasize. I didn't know any of that. So, and then the other thing on this side was the black belt was, after the classes, he did like these 2-hour seminars about anarchism and lots of things like that. It was very, I think, yeah, if you're an OG GP Bondi member, you probably know the gym I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But so after 3 months at that gym, I just left. And they actually kind of ripped me off as well. They kept taking my money for a few months after. And yeah, so it comes back to what Sash was saying before. Know the lineage of the gym.
Yeah.
He wanted to first train at. And so from January to March or April, 3 months, I was training there. And then from March, like the rest of that year, I just didn't do jiu-jitsu. I just stopped.
Right. So you waited like basically the bulk of 2013. You didn't train, and then in 2014, sometime is when you found and began training at Gracie Barra Bondi. What?
So,
sorry, go on. Yeah.
No.
Okay. I was just gonna ask, man, what pushed you back towards jiu-jitsu or pulled you back towards jiu-jitsu? How come you didn't just go,
Yeah.
this sucks, I'm never coming back, and go do something else?
I I still really enjoy doing jiu-jitsu, right? I love
Mm,
the sport. It was so interesting, it was so great. And I love the benefits like that I could prove to myself, like a smaller person overcoming bigger people, like another theme which I'm gonna talk a lot about.
mm, mm.
And I remember it was April 2014. Like if you know the Bondi Junction area, like you've got the Macca's at the top, and then like there's an elevator going down.
Yep,
And yeah, and if you go down that elevator, that's where I would go to catch my bus. But as I went down, I saw in the corner of my eye like Gracie Baja, right?
yep.
And I was like, oh, okay, let's try again. I was stubborn, right? I didn't want to. I wanted to give another crack because I loved it. I loved jujitsu. It's just my image of jujitsu was you go 1 week in and you get beaten up
Mm,
because that's what I saw.
mm.
Um, So, and then also I was listening to like lots of like podcasts, as I said before, and that they talked about all the great benefits. So I decided to, give it another go.
Yeah, okay.
And so like I went down the elevator, I saw the Gracie Barra sign, Bondi, and that's when it was the very first location.
Yes, shout out Professor Pedro, who's in the Zoom chat. I
Yes,
can see him watching. Our first
yes,
home at Gracie Barra Bondi. Thank you for
yes,
getting us both started, Professor.
yeah. So I remember I joined that gym. I think within the first year it opened. I think like a
Mm,
month later or a month and a half later, they had their first year anniversary. So I came back and my mind was like completely like changed of like jujitsu. Professor Pedro was like a very big inspiration to me to rekindle that love of
mm.
jujitsu, which I didn't know was there. So I just and that's a testament to why I stayed at Gracie Barra Bondi for at least 4 or 5 years because it was such a great environment, so many great people. I can see lying in the chat as well. I
Yeah.
had really, really good experiences. He taught me so much as well there. Lots of people there, like so many great members. I'm sure you remember though, gee, because you were there like shortly after I joined. You remember
Yeah,
Marcus
we
and
joined, yeah,
Vanessa.
really
Yeah,
similar times. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, of course, of course. Feels like home. Going back to Gracie Barra Bondi feels like home, even in a different building. They've changed
yeah.
places twice now. Um, I've forgotten my question. I was getting too nostalgic about Gracie Barra Bondi. Oh, okay. No,
No,
so I
no.
remember. I remember. So, how quickly did you develop the idea or the sensation that, like, oh man, this is the place to stay? This is the gym. This is the community. This is the people. This is the team. How fast did that form in your head, and why, or what sort of made that stick?
Yeah, I think it was definitely within the first 2 months or the first 3 months because I can also remember before I was a three strike where we can start doing sparring and things like that. I remember as a two strike white belt, I would like after the fundamental class, I would watch the advanced classes just because I wanted to like see what was happening.
Mm, mm.
Something that I would recommend other jiu-jitsu practitioners do in Gracie Baja. You can always watch classes, even if you're injured, even if you're not eligible, you can always watch classes from the outside. So I think, like when I was watching the classes, I could just see the camaraderie, right? The really good vibes. Like,
Mm.
so the contrast I'm going to say before with the gym I started and Gracie Baja Bondi is that everyone was bringing each other up, right? Rather than one person coming up to so that other people go down.
Mm.
Everyone was like bringing each other up, and I wanted to be in that environment where everyone goes up together.
Yeah.
And you could see those killers in our gym, man.
Hell yeah.
Man,
Hell yeah.
bro, those killers. And then also, yeah, and then I would be remiss if I didn't mention Professor Sash, very strong influence for me in the
Mm.
early days
Mm.
as well, along with Professor Petra.
Mm.
So yeah, I think that idea of everyone coming up together was really a nice idea for me.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's it. Have that healthy community to be a part of. It's the same for me, I feel.
yeah.
Alrighty. So let's start talking, more specifically about your jiu-jitsu journey itself. We've talked about, trying a different gym, finding a home at Gracie Barra Bondi, but even at the first gym you trained at, you said it was very difficult. And part of that was just because of the culture of the gym. When you started training at Bondi, the culture might have been much more welcoming. But was jiu-jitsu, would you say it was still a really difficult sport to come to terms with?
I remember as a lot of people who start jiu-jitsu, like coming home with like bruises on my arm and like lots of like, so coming in there, and especially being my size as well in jiu-jitsu, I remember I had lots of chest pains, especially from bottom side control,
Mm.
but so much pressure on my chest, and then I could like get shoulder pains, and then it extended down to my elbow. So it was like a hard adjustment. And I think just what I kind of did that at that time was I felt like I needed those breaks. I needed like a day off to recover. And I think when people come into jiu-jitsu, they go gun ho, they go every day like jits, 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 jits. And that's everyone's different. That's it, man. That's a totally cool. I couldn't do that. I had to take those days off just to let my body recover,
Yeah.
take those salt baths and things like that. It was hard, man. It's a
Yeah.
hard adjustment, and also keeping that schedule, but perseverance, I guess, just keep at it. And also having those like incremental gains, because I think it's
Mm.
really hard for yourself to see you're growing in jiu-jitsu. Like other people from the outside can see your growth,
Mm.
but yourself, you can't see your incremental gains. But I would say like it's there, those
Yeah.
incremental gains are there. It's just because they're so like, I guess, minuscule that it's
Mm.
harder to see. It's like diminishing return, right? It kind of
Yeah, of
curves like
course.
up like that.
And when you do
So
fail,
yeah,
it's so personal, right? It's someone sitting on your chest. It's easy to feel like
yeah,
you suck when you're
bro,
getting squashed at jiu-jitsu.
yeah, that neon belly, bro, yeah. But yeah, no, that, I think having like that idea that even though
Mm,
like there's incremental gains was really important.
mm, mm.
Yeah,
Okay. Who I think in jiu-jitsu we say often like the black belts to learn from, some of the best black belts to learn technique from are the smaller guys, right?
yeah,
Because they've had to have an experience I think you had as well where you can't just walk in and even if you know nothing just go I'm going to grab this person and pin them because I'm big, right? You have to learn technique. Is that something you recognized straight away and held on to, or did you have influences who helped you say sort of like stay strong and go look dude just keep trucking like guys like I'm thinking Professor Marcus down at Gracie Barra Shot Harbour now who
yeah.
was at Bondi for a while. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like seeing people like Professor Marcus at Shell Harbour, like just watching him roll from the outset, just seeing the way that he could like systematically dismantle someone's game was
Yes.
like a really good, like, I guess, not, I don't want to say endpoint, but somewhere to like work towards.
Mm.
Like something that is like, oh, if that man can do it, then what's stopping someone like me from doing that? And also, I think someone who was on the podcast 4 weeks ago, Professor Carl, he would visit our gym every
Bro,
Saturday.
man, you're like my most up-to-date listener, Ari. I don't even remember who was on
Bro,
4 weeks ago.
bro, I know I know who you're talking to.
Hell yeah,
I know
dude.
what's up. I know what's up.
I appreciate that.
But someone like Professor Carl as well, like
Mm,
just watching like, so I like watching them roll from the outset and watching how systematically they can use their game to overcome obstacles was just really interesting and
mm,
a really good goal to work towards.
mm,
And even though like those hard times at the start were there, I could like think, well, I can see like some sort of goal to reach. So like definitely them,
mm,
watching them roll.
mm.
I would also be remiss to mention, sorry for
No,
interrupting,
go, go.
someone who I also looked up to a lot when I first started, and I think people don't mention enough, is Master Helio Gracie.
Right, yeah, sure.
Like someone like him, right? Someone who's like not huge, like a very like fragile man, small in stature, but using
Mm,
really good technique. Watch
mm,
You can watch some of his YouTube videos of his instructionals; they're very interesting.
mm,
Of watching him implement his techniques and what he adapted the game to doing.
mm.
If I could recommend one fight from 1953, sorry, but it's really interesting. Helio Gracie versus I think Takehiro Kimura from 1953.
Hmm.
They had this really long fight in Brazil, went probably like 60 minutes. And even though Master Helio Gracie didn't defeat Kimura, he got such a rousing applause for the
Yeah,
technique he used. And just very interesting. So yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, when I feel a bit of a tangent there,
No, so fine, so
but
fine.
I'm sort of like,
Do
yeah.
you normally I sort of leave the what advice do you have questions till towards the end of the interview, right? Especially when question time comes up, which by the way, guys, if you have a question, just fire it away and I'll slip it in. Um,
Yeah, do you
but
want to really listen to
but
Coach Nick talk all day?
yeah, hey,
I'm here.
hey, hey. But what advice would you have for? I think it applies to everyone who trains jiu-jitsu, but especially for students who have the sensation that like, man, I go to class and physically larger training partners who, without not necessarily trying to be mean, but they can just like physically bully you. How do you kind of, I don't know, both internalize what's going on, what's happening at training, and then build a strategy to move forward and develop in the face of that kind of pressure?
That's such a good question. And I think I'll touch on 2 points, I think,
Mm,
here.
mm,
I think firstly is like having the confidence in your ability, right?
mm.
Like, and having a faith in your ability. So when you go into, I know, especially when I started, I'm sure a lot of people felt the same way. When they go into training, they're like, "Oh, I'm scared of that guy. I'm like, I'm scared of that guy. I
Yeah,
don't want
dude.
to roll that with that guy." I think
Yeah.
just like breathe, and even if they're like in larger stature, just have faith in what you can do.
Sorry,
have,
Professor Pedro just sent me a question. I'll get to it in a minute, perhaps. Keep going,
yeah,
Ari.
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
But no, 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 no. Just like have faith in what you can do. And
Mm,
the other thing I want to touch on is you you when you have faith in what you can do, right? You know what you can do. But I think it's also important to learn what you can't do. We always talk about learning techniques, new techniques, but also learn things that you can't do. So I'll
mm,
give you a perfect example. Like for example, like one of my favorite things to do is omoplata, as many people know. But I know I can't, if I get into the position like an omoplata position, I know that it's really hard for me to pin the shoulder of a really larger person.
mm.
So I know that I can't do that. But I know that if I get into that situation, I can hope they roll over. I can hope they react to that situation. And then that's when I can progress my game, getting to the full mount and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So just to like bring back the point, like knowing what you can do and like learning what your body can't do is as important.
That's it, right? Your game has to be both like your personality, what you want to do, but what your body can do, right? I'm just
Exactly.
not
And
flexible like some of the guys in the gym. I can't try to copy them. It's not going to work. Or like you,
yeah,
actually, Ari, a perfect example.
bro,
You move in a way I can't. I can admire it from a distance, but I can't copy some of the stuff you do. It'll break me.
oh man.
Super quick. I want to slip in, Ari. I think you'll like this. Little Javier Bassa from Gracie Baja Carlton. He and his family, he and Caitlin are watching tonight. They've just sent a little message just to say hi.
Hey, oh, honey, oh my gosh, oh my god, those young
Yeah, dude.
4-year-old classes. Oh man, nice to
Man.
see you, Javi.
When the lockdown ends, we can all train together again. Um,
Yeah, that's it, baby.
alrighty. So then, okay, you're training jiu-jitsu. It's hard work. Very quickly, just before we start talking about Japan, because I think that's something a lot of people want to hear about as
Yeah,
well. What I remember hearing, or like when you announced that you were going to teach classes on the lawns of University in New South Wales, right? For charity, I believe you were doing like free sort of seminars. And at the
yeah,
time, for myself, I remember thinking like, man, how the hell, like I barely have confidence doing my jiu-jitsu on the mats in the gym with people that I train with and who I know like and respect me and I respect them. How the hell did you develop the confidence to just go, you know what, I'm going to bring jiu-jitsu to a crowd of people I don't know at university? And I also know, and I think maybe this influenced me at the time, that on those university walkways, they can be brutal, right? Students come up trying to talk about student politics, and people just like brush
yeah.
you off, walk past you. It's like being on the savannah, man. It's like a hunting ground. What motivated that, and how did you feel comfortable doing that?
Wow. I think that's a really great question, and I'm really happy that you brought that up as well. I wasn't. So I started teaching jiu-jitsu, right? As a
Mm,
blue belt,
mm.
I like pretty much instantly got my ICP. I was like started teaching, and I love teaching, man. I really enjoy teaching jiu-jitsu, and I was like in that mindset. I want to spread it, man. I want to
Mm,
spread jiu-jitsu.
mm.
Let me actually share a photo of one of the classes we did. Hopefully, people can see that.
Boom, boom,
Um,
boom. There it is.
Yeah, so the idea behind this was there was like I guess a campaign within the university to raise money for the children's hospital
Mm,
near in Randwick, right?
mm.
And people were coming up with different ideas to raise money, and I always felt uncomfortable just asking people for money. I wanted to give someone a service, and I felt like my service was to teach jujitsu. So I set
Hell
up
yeah.
so I set up this weekly, like, I guess, curriculum for the semester. And I set up the Facebook event. And the way that I got people in was I said, free jiu-jitsu class, bring your friends, anyone can join. At the end of the class, just donate how much you feel like it's worth.
Mm,
I
mm.
didn't ask anyone for money. I didn't say, and I set
You're
up
leaving them the
so
opportunity to say, "Hey, dude, that sucked. You're not getting any money."
yeah. And I set it up next to the main walkway because I wanted to be there. I wanted people to
Yeah,
see jiu-jitsu.
yeah.
So if you saw the photo, I got these blue mats from the nearby gym. And then
Mhm.
every Wednesday I would have this jiu-jitsu class.
Amazing, man.
And as
Amazing.
you can see, a lot of people there have never done
You pulled
jiu-jitsu
a crowd,
before. Or,
yeah.
yeah, I was really happy. And we kind of built a bit of community and I was really happy to get donations for the Children's Hospital and also share jiu-jitsu to the students. So really one of the special memories I have as a blue belt.
Yeah.
And yeah, the teaching part of jiu-jitsu really drew me. It was really fun. Wanted to share it.
Hell
And
yeah.
yeah, it was really nice moments. Yeah.
Hey, my pleasure. I gotta call out the good work when it's being done, dude. That's something I always remember about you. I was impressed then, still impressed now.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Alrighty. Let's talk about Japan, Ari. Uh,
Sure.
I think you're almost fluent in Japanese or fairly fluent in Japanese, right? I don't know, maybe you can give us a
Uh,
gauge of how well you speak Japanese. Did that sort of interest in Japan and Japanese culture begin before jiu-jitsu?
yeah. So I actually didn't like have any like experience with Japan until 2016. Couldn't really speak, couldn't really have any interest. The reason I moved, so we'll take it back a step.
Mm,
So as a blue belt, I was very lucky to save some money and do lots of traveling. And whenever I travel, I bring my gi and I visit gyms. Like as a blue belt, I was able to visit at least I think 25 gyms. I just would travel around and just train
damn,
at
dude.
many places.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of Gracie Barras in Europe, in Paris, London, lots of places. So the reason I went to Japan, so on that trip in 2015, I
Mm,
had no idea. I did a random Google search, just like top 10 prettiest gyms in the world. And I think one of the option was a gym called Access Jiu Jitsu.
mm,
So in 2015, I was staying in Tokyo for about a month, and I would just train at that gym, like probably like every second day, kind of like a training camp. And I really loved the vibe at the gym. I really liked the environment. It was really nice. It was really cool to train with the guys there. And I just remember when I was catching the flight when I was catching the bus from in the center of Tokyo to the airport to go to my next destination, I thought to myself back then, it's like, I have to come back here, man.
yeah.
There's something that drew me to
Mm,
Japan at that time. After that trip, I started to study a bit, started to learn a bit more, be more involved in the community in Sydney. And then I kind of merged two things that I really like teaching and Japanese culture, Japan, the history, the martial arts aspect. In 2018, I got an opportunity to do a teaching program where I would like move to Japan and teach at elementary and junior high school. So that's kind of how the impetus of that came
Yeah.
about. And I didn't get to choose where I lived. It was random. It was like a government program. So
Right. I always thought you
I
chose the city you moved to, and I thought,
no,
damn, he's really put himself in
I
the deep end here.
no. I've got a photo actually. So yeah, if you can see the photo, where that
Yes,
arrow is, that's where I lived, like really rural Japan, Kochi.
Kochi.
Um, yes,
I remember,
like
I think you said to me it's rural by Japan standards, but the city was still a few 100,000 people, perhaps?
yeah,
Not tiny, not tiny like, tiny Australian beach town tiny.
yeah. Um, it was very rural. Like
Mm.
just to give you a point of reference, it's like the least visited prefecture of Japan by tourists.
Whoa.
So like no tourists go there, like very little foreign exposure, very pretty much everyone there speaks Japanese, like no English there. So that's kind of the vibe.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I kind of wanted to live overseas. I thought back in 2015 I wanted to live in Japan, and so I kind of worked towards that goal. So I was in that city for about 2.5 years,
2.5 years.
2018
Wow.
to 2020, mid 2020.
Yeah. Can
So
you?
yeah.
Not even specific to jiu-jitsu yet. What was the biggest culture shock living in Japan in the beginning, at least?
I think especially where I was living, it was just kind of that feeling of being like a really like an outsider. Because
Mm.
like when I was in Tokyo, like there's like lots of foreign people, and it was like, wow, okay, this might be okay. But then when you go to rural Japan, wow,
Mm.
not that much like English spoken. Like I would walk days and days and not see another foreign person.
It's
And I'm not saying like as that a bad or a good thing. It's just kind of like what
yeah,
the environment's
a
like.
different experience and sensation. It's one thing to be a
Yeah,
tourist among tourists, a tourist all on your own. All of a sudden, it's a
yeah.
different vibe. How well
And
could you speak Japanese at that stage?
it was okay. Like my confidence wasn't there. I
Mm.
was like, it was hard. Like pretty much in the first 6 months of me, at the gym I was training at, I learned pretty much just through motions. Like the instructions, I picked up words here and there, but it was mostly just by like watching them demonstrate techniques in
Wow.
seminars and things like that.
W-
So yeah,
What was that
it
like
was.
as an experience of learning jujitsu? I mean, the current kind of zeitgeist of learning jujitsu now, right, is guys like John Danaher who will give you 7,000 words on how to make a collar grip correctly. What was it like to learn just by semaphore, hand
just
signals, and
just motions, man. Like I, as you know, like I'm a big fan of those little details in my game,
mm,
like
mm.
demonstrating details. So like not being able to hear those little details, I kind of had to find the details myself. So like really being observant, like oh he moved his arm like 5 centimeters to the left. I
Yeah,
wonder why he did that. Oh, he
yeah.
probably did that because of that. I was kind of also in the sense kind of like in a lucky because I just got my purple belt.
Mm,
So like I wasn't like a fish out of water in any sense of the mean. Like I could kind of like
mm, mm.
blend in quite easily. So for someone starting, it might have been incredibly more difficult. But as someone who's been in the system, if you will, for a few
The
years,
system,
I
that's
was
it. Yeah, that was what? You'd been training for maybe 4 or 5 years by then?
yeah,
Somewhere around
five
there? Yeah, yeah.
5 years,
Yeah.
5 years,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Aside from that language barrier, when it comes to training specifically, was there culture shock, or maybe culture shock is not the best phrase to use, but just what was different? What can you tell us about training in Japan versus training in Gracie Barra, Bondi, or Carlton, or anywhere else?
So I think especially every gym will be different, but for my particular gym, it was way less structured, right? No curriculums, nothing like that. So the very first time I visited the gym, um, they have two venues, right? Every Thursday we go to a really large gymnasium. I think I've got a photo somewhere as well.
Man,
popular in
Ari
second.
coming prepared with the photos.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. So like every Thursday we would train in this really large gymnasium, really, really big. And it's really funny. When I first entered the gym, before I came, you would see high school students on the right studying, and they were the wrestlers. So this is like a wrestling mat.
Right, right.
And on the left, you would see rice, protein, and eggs as they for their meal because they were just like wrestling, wrestling, wrestling. So I
Competition
would train
diet.
this. So this is really nice because this was like a 2 hour roll. Sorry, I forgot. We did 2 hour rolls on these
Mm-mm.
mats, and then at the end, everyone would clean up the mats together. Everyone would like clean the mats together, and then we would go to the I guess the head wrestling coach, and everyone would say thank you to him
Mm.
as we left. And the other thing was, always, 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 when you enter the mats, you shake every single person's hand, and it's something that I still do. Like whenever I enter the mat, I would like shake every person's hand, and it's a really nice um, show of respect to the person there. And
Mm.
always before you start a roll, you always like say thank you, and then after you finish a roll, you say thank you as well. Lots of these like little things and
But
of
don't
respect.
get it twisted, everyone. Ari was polite before all these experiences. Okay, he was a lovely dude through and through before this.
um, and then I've got a few other photos actually. And then always and then um, all the other days we
Mm.
would train in a very I guess smaller venue. So here's a photo of the gym that we trained at in the other one. There's one photo.
That's a great photo. That dude being strangled.
Yeah. Wait, this would be a better photo actually. Yeah, this is a
Uh-huh.
better photo. So this is the gym. This is the mats that we trained at. It only fit a few rolls. So
Wow.
like you would think that Japan, lots of space, and this was in the middle of the farms.
Mm.
So on either side was farmland, and it would just fit two
Amazing.
rolls, and then usually everyone would watch as well. And yeah, in the summer it was bloody hot, and in the winter it was absolutely
I
freezing.
think
So
you
definitely,
sorry, no, sorry, continue.
no, 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 no. Go on,
I
sir.
think you mentioned to me you used to ride your bike for like 45 minutes in the freezing cold and in the dark to get to and from the
Uh,
gym at nighttime in winter. Something like this.
Yeah. So, well, that last gym that I showed was kind of far from where I lived. It was like, and I wasn't allowed to drive a car in
Mm.
Japan. It was like part of my work contract. So I had my bicycle, and yeah, I would ride. So like to get to that gym, it takes about 45 minutes on the bicycle.
Mm.
So I would like ride my bicycle, but it was also over a hill and through a tunnel. So I remember I had to walk my bicycle up and then I would like go down. And we had classes from 8 to 10 p.m. So I would get home at like 11 p.m.
Damn.
But I'm so happy you mentioned that because it brings back a really good point that Professor Pedro mentioned to me as a white belt. And he said something like, if you want to train, you'll make it work. Like
Yeah.
you'll make it work. Like if you want to train, if there's like an option to train, you'll do what you need to do to get there. And that stuck with me. And I did that
Mm.
because
Mm.
I'm not going to give up jiu-jitsu for 2 years. That would be crazy.
That's it. That's it.
Double workout, man.
Just
It was,
quickly.
yes.
Oh no, sorry. You were about to say?
No, 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 go on.
Okay,
No,
okay.
no.
Just a
Yeah.
question from Liam. He wanted to know more about your training in Japan. Liam has asked, living in Japan sounds fascinating. What did you feel were your strengths and weaknesses against your Japanese training partners? And what were some of the cool things you managed to take away from your practice there?
Oh,
Thank you
that's
for the
such a
question,
good.
Liam.
Thanks, Lion, and really good to hear from you as well. And that's a really good question as well. So some of the definitely my weaknesses was my cardio. These guys were absolute guns, man. They were so fit. Oh my gosh! I remember one time we were doing a like a sparring session, right? And everyone was like watching this one guy train. I think more of like a Shark Tank because he had a competition coming up.
Mm.
And this guy, he was wearing a mask before it was cool to inhibit his breathing. like back in 2019.
Before it was cool.
While he was training, these guys' cardios are crazy. And also, what they would do was they would raise the temperature up in the gym. I
Mm.
remember it was like 30, they would put it to 31 degrees, and we would roll for like so long. And we would do like drills, like 100 sets of things. And it was just, my cardio was so not there. So I had to really work on my cardio when I was there. Yeah. But the nice thing about Japan, especially, was there's a lot
Mm.
of smaller guys like me and very technical, very super technical. So especially when I went to competitions, I would actually have fights because
Yes.
there were people there of my size, and the technique was so spot on.
Was
In
that
terms of
sorry, no, no, keep going,
So
keep
in
going.
terms of things that I had, which I found was advantageous, was I
Mm.
think my fundamental was like really solid, especially coming from Gracie Baja,
Mm.
really solid fundamentals. And coming to a gym which didn't really have a curriculum, I think my fundamentals really carried me
Hmm.
more than I would have thought. So
Hell
yeah,
yeah.
I think that's something that helped me a lot there.
Shout out the Gracie Baja fundamental curriculum. There you go, building legends.
Thank you, Professor Sash.
That's it, man. No one gets more pumped up about hip escapes than Sash, eh?
Yes.
um, I have a question from Cami actually, but just quickly, rather selfishly, I'm going to ask my own question first. Sorry, Camilla. Was it almost like you spent the first 4.5 or 5 years training in Gracie Barra Bondi, and you're getting used to the fact that you have mostly larger training partners? Was it almost difficult to then begin training regularly with smaller training partners because your game, your approach is tailored to, oh, this person's going to be heavier, and then all of a sudden you're faced with a ninja like yourself, which I know from my experience is really frustrating to train against. Was that hard or?
It's, it was frustrating that everyone wanted to pull guard or everyone wanted to like pull straight off their back. It's like, that's what I do. I pull guard. I follow my back. I play off my back. You're not allowed to play off your back. I play
Yeah.
off my back. But so I think easing in was okay. I remember when I would like visit Australia back in 2019 when I was living in Japan, and I would of course visit GB Bondi, GB Carlton. I just like, wow, I don't remember. It was so big. It's like wow, I'm just adjusting back into it.
Mm.
But yeah, I think it was like okay to ease in. I would just like really work on my top game, I guess, because
Mm.
everyone wanted to pull guard, and then yeah, coming back to that rhythm of adjusting. I remember something that someone said to me really interesting. I was training at a sorry, shout out to GB Scotland,
Whoa.
and I was visiting a gym there, and they said to me, I was rolling around the black belts, and he said, "Do play your game to make the other person feel uncomfortable, right?
Mm.
So if you play a lot of your back and you're going at someone heavier than you, then of course they have more experience playing top game. So you're giving them the advantage. So really, you want to like change it. So if you're going someone's much heavier, then you want to be the one on top because then they're uncomfortable. You want them to be more uncomfortable than you. So that's the impetus to start working my top game was because I wanted my opponents to feel more comfortable than you. Of course, I feel very comfortable off my back, but I'm giving them their comfortable positions as well.
Yeah, yeah. You'd
So
rather they suffered than you felt comfortable.
yeah, exactly.
Alrighty. Quick question from Camilla. She wants to know about the training culture in Japan for women. Were there female students at your gym? What was that? What was that like in Japan?
That's a really good question. So there was only one female student in our club. Of course, we didn't have a very big club as well. There's only 15 or 20 people in our club, but there was only one female, so it might not be a very indicative sample size or survey. But I don't want to give advice or information which I don't have a perspective on, just because I'll have to get back to that. But I
Sure,
felt
sure.
like that one woman was able to settle in quite well. Everyone was like,
Mm.
yeah, it's just hard to answer that question because I don't have enough perspective to talk about it. I know Yeah. Sorry,
Sure,
Camilla.
sure. You'll have to travel there yourself, Camilla, sometime when Axel's a bit older, perhaps. Another question, and then I want to start talking about competition in Japan. So, last
Yeah.
quick question here from Professor Hodolfo. Ari, he says, you're one of the best teachers he's seen. Can you tell us about how you started teaching jiu-jitsu and how you learned to teach, how you learned the act of teaching, I suppose?
Yeah. Well, that's such a fantastic compliment. Thank you, Professor Rodolfo. It means a lot coming from you, Professor. Thank you so much. And yeah, as I said before, I started teaching Jiu-Jitsu as a blue belt. I gave such a great opportunity from Professor Pedro at GB Bondi to get those opportunities to start teaching. And yeah, I think anyone that says they're a good teacher when they first started, that they're lying to you. I was terrible. I was such a bad teacher when I first started. I made so many like mistakes. I would like after the class, I remember I had a chat with Professor Pedro, like, oh, I taught the wrong thing in that class. Oh no, what should I do? And he said, it's fine, it's fine. At least they learned something. And I had a lot of those I had a lot of those moments. But I think I kind of got into the rhythm where I put my mindset of a student. It's like, what do they want to hear? What do they
Mm,
want to learn? And I always remembered that I love those little details. And I felt like a lot of the students love those little details of what works in particular situations.
mm,
So I would always like to explain it very clearly, concisely, and really emphasize what I thought was important. The other thing which I got lots of practice was I introduced morning classes at GB Bondi. So every Tuesday and Thursday, I was really luckily given the opportunity to teach morning classes. And I did that for about 2.5 years, 2.5 years. So, and it was a very small class. So I was like, I think that really honed my abilities to
mm.
teach because when it's a small class, it's intimate. You get that really one-on-one connection with the students. I might have a photo. Actually, it's okay. I'm kidding. But yeah, I think being in those environments of those intimate situations really helped a lot. So
Mm,
yeah,
mm. Terrific. Do you
thank
what
you.
do you I want to add to Hodolfo's question before we talk about competition, which I've alluded to like twice now. Man, you're also really good at teaching the kids. When you came down to Carlton and offered to help us teach the kids classes, I was excited just to have you there, and but then seeing you teach the kids, which is I think very similar, but also it's different to teaching adults too, right?
Yeah, 100%,
But
hundred
you
percent.
did that terrifically as well. Had you had that experience elsewhere, or it just came naturally to you, or because man, all the kids too, they all love Coach Ari. They still ask about
Uh,
Coach Ari, bro.
that's really sweet, and of course, I want to teach and train with them more again. I I did have a lot of experience teaching kids because at GB Bondi, I also would teach the kids classes. I
Mm-hmm.
remember I would first start teaching the kids classes with Coach Michelle when I was very, like, even when I was a white belt, I would help with the kids classes and I would learn from like really great teachers, like, of course, Coach Michelle, a very, very high level teacher, one of the best that we have. And like learning from her and how she
Mm-hmm.
interacts with children was very, very important to me. And I always thought, like, of course, teaching adults and kids are different, but there's also similarities there.
Mm.
So when we teach adults, like, if I want to get respect from my students, I need to show respect. I need to, it's like, it's two ways. So when I would teach children, it's kind of the same idea. If I want respect from them, if I want them to listen to me, I need to give respect to them. I need to show that they're important. I need to show why their presence in the class matters.
Mm.
So really emphasizing that and building that strong connection as well. It was just, and it's just fun.
It is
Like
fun,
watching
yeah.
little kids in kimonos, it's fun. And one of my favorite things, I know you want to talk about competitions, but I would be remiss if
Mm-mm.
I didn't mention one of my favorite things in the kids classes when you watch these two kids who roll with each other and they just have the most banging roll. And you think to yourselves, man, those kids are going to be with each other for years and years and years, and they're just going to, and I'm sure you've seen that as a coach, right? And they're just going to bring each other up
Yeah,
together.
yeah.
And that is probably one of the most special parts of like just seeing these kids who like we're going to see each other every week. They're just going to roll. They're going to roll every week. And I'm sure a lot of the other gyms can see that as well. That's awesome.
Yes, I agree. And they're going to push each other and they're going to be best friends and worst enemies. They'll go through the whole gamut, smashing each other on the mats. and come out the other
Yeah.
side good friends. Bro, beautiful. Alrighty. Another question which I think ties into competition perhaps, so we can kind of segue into competition this way. This is from Zoom user, so I have no idea who this anonymous person is. They've asked, you're so good when you're going against the bigger guys. What's your secret? Do you have a game plan?
That's a great question.
Oh, it's
Okay,
Dia.
so,
It's Dia. He never has the correct name on Zoom. Thank you, Dia.
that's very flattering. I still got so much to learn against bigger opponents, but so especially for competition, something that I always keep in mind is if they're bigger than me, I hope they can gas out before me. So what I would do is I'll pull guard, give them my close guard, and I wouldn't do much for about 2.5 minutes. Now, and I know that I can keep my guard place, and I'll just like play, and then I would advance from there. I think in a more broader sense, though, against bigger opponents, I think having a really strong fundamentals and especially having a really strong close guard really helps, like keeping them immobilized in situations. And I'll reference back to what I was saying before, know what you can do and learn what you can't do. So especially with other opponents, and I'm just going to say people in general, right? Like the idea of action reaction. So I don't know, people, I'm just going to use myself as an example. I might do something not to get a position, to get that reaction. And then from there, work different movements. Perfect example, right? I'm never going to do a sit-up sweep against a larger opponent. I would love to. I would be optimistic to, but then they might get a reaction. They might place their hand. They might do something, and then I can play from there. I hope that answers your question. Thank you for the question, Dio.
Perfect. Pedro has asked, well, we're never going to get to talk about competition in Japan. Look, very quickly, let's do this. Let's talk about your competition experiences in Japan, and then we'll come back to questions, and we'll finish with questions, and people can ask as many as they like until we exhaust poor Ari, and he drifts off to bed. So, competition in Japan. When you traveled over, did you think, I'm going to train here and compete, or the opportunity to compete came up and you thought, why not? What happened?
Yeah, I always loved competing as a white belt and a blue belt. It was always a fun experience for me, and I was never a very good competitor. Like I remember the first time I ever even medaled was a 4-stripe blue belt after 8 competitions. That was the first time I ever medaled. But I always liked it. It was fun, and I could like see every time that I was getting a bit better. And I thought, I'm here, man. A lot of my teammates were competing. It might be a fun experience. Let's do it. And the very first competition I did, this is a really fun story. I did a competition, like the first 3 months I first landed, and it was we call it the Shikoku Taikai, which means like Shikoku competition, which is all the prefectures in the island come together for a competition. And for this, we would like wake up at like 5 a.m. Everyone would like get the cars together and would drive up to the nearby prefecture. And the way that the competition works is that there's only one mat, and you get a number. So you know your number, and you just go on the mat, and everyone watches the fights. Everyone watches the fights. So I had my number, and in this competition, I was also the only foreigner. So there's obviously some interest of like, oh, who's this guy?
Yeah.
So I remember when I think people must have memorized my number, because when my number was called, like people came from the bathroom, people stopped smoking. Everyone rushed, and it's like my first comp. And amazing. I went against this guy, and I didn't do particularly well. I lost that fight, and I'll reference back to that story in a bit. But it was so interesting, like that one idea, and just everyone watching. Everyone is like very nice. Everyone's very calm, and I think at the end of that fight, I got like a really good like applause, because I showed like a lot of fighting spirit against this opponent. Like I was able to go through the entire time.
Were you nervous when you saw the crowds of people running over to watch the foreigner go to war?
I was Yeah, there's a photo of the competition. You can see here. There's the number
Hmm.
that gets called. Um, yeah, I would be lying if I said I wasn't. I was very nervous. Yeah, but I just like hopefully stayed calm and showed my game.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm.
it was interesting. But it was a very good experience. And then after that competition, we all went back to our prefecture. We all rode back, and I think we did like shabu shabu. Like that's what we always do at the end
Yum.
of competitions. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was great. It was a good one.
I know
So
you're very fond of Japanese food. You're always your Instagram is always
yeah.
full of Japanese food.
Oh man. But it was really cool because in that competition, our team actually came second in the prefecture, which
Wow.
was like really cool. There's a photo of us. Oh, that's from a different competition, but yeah, that's
Wicked.
yeah, that's our team there.
There's some strong
Okay,
looking dudes.
yeah, yeah, it's really nice. So that photo actually was the year after that I just showed everyone.
Mm.
And a nice like journey for me was I actually got gold in that one. So coming from like losing my first fight to getting used to the environment and getting one, I think my first gold was a really nice experience for me.
Mm. What do you
So I would,
think? Sorry, no, keep going, keep going.
so yeah,
I
I
keep
was gonna
cutting you off.
say
Mm.
I think I would have did competitions like once every 4 months, and yeah, it was the same vibe. I
Mm.
was able to do it in that prefecture. I was able to go to Osaka, Kyoto, Okayama, lots of
Wow,
different areas, Hiroshima, and do competitions. And
wow.
yeah, it was pretty cool because like it was kind of like in Oceania or in Sydney, like you'll see the same guys like going
Yeah,
from competition to competition. So it was like kind of like a bit of a community. It
yeah,
was nice.
yeah. But all around the island.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Amazing. That's
cool.
so cool.
Um,
That's so cool. What do you
yeah,
think changed that saw you get to the gold? Was being more comfortable on the mats at competition, or there wasn't a crowd of people running in that time, or you've just been training a bit longer, your cardio caught up to these guys?
definitely the cardio. Like, definitely the cardio. These guys were so technical and so really had really yeah, very technical, very fit, and just didn't. And also their stand up was like insanely good.
Mm.
Like, oh my gosh. So yeah, we would always start standing in our gym. So working on my stand up helped a lot as well. But I definitely think the cardio, being comfortable in the environment, yeah.
Mm. Mm.
So yeah, it was good. Yeah.
Terrific, terrific, man. Remarkable experience training in Japan and
Yeah.
competing. That's so cool. That's such a cool bond and story to have. Let's
Yeah.
before we say
Um,
all our goodbyes, unless you have any other little anything you want to mention about competition or anything, Ari, I think we'll open the door to whatever burning questions people
no,
have
no, bring the questions. I would
kept to
hate for someone not
themselves.
to get their question answered. Yeah, you don't want to hear me ramble on forever.
You'd be surprised, bro. You'd be surprised. Alrighty, let's start with Professor Pedro again. Please share with us your journey from blue belt to purple belt.
Let's see. So I remember as I got my blue belt, so
Mm.
as I got my purple belt right at the end, I remember my blue belt journey is as crazy as my purple. It's going to be it's going to be wild. And of course, when got my purple, I moved to Japan. During my blue belt, I was, as I said before, I was able to travel to lots of different gyms and train at lots of different places because I love that. At the time, I saved up a bit of money. I went from country to country and I trained to lots of different places. One of my favorite memories, actually, with a country I visited was I was training in Poland with my brother,
Mm.
and we went to one of the clubs there at nighttime, and my brother wanted to go the next night, and I said to him, "No, let's go tonight. This is the option. Let's not miss out our chance." So we went to this gym in Poland, in Warsaw, no,
Mm.
Krakow, Warsaw.
Mm.
And we did the class. We did the class. It was great. Someone got promoted, and
Oh
that was
wow.
nice. And then as we left the mats, we saw in the corner of our eyes Joanna Jędrzejczyk there, and I'm like, "What the shit? That was insane!" And
Yo, you want a
bro,
champion? No way.
yeah, let me uh, so just seeing her like at the gym. was like amazing. And she was like doing her preparation with I forgot his name now. Sorry, we'd be remiss if I didn't remember him.
So this is an MMA school as well that you had dropped in to do
Yeah,
some
it
sparring
was
at.
an
Yeah.
MMA school. It
Oh,
was
wow.
incredible.
That's so
Um,
cool, bro.
so it was really, really that's a cool experience. I think, especially in my blue to purple, is when I really started to develop my game as
Mm,
well.
mm,
Um, and the idea of using and shifting from my flexibility to having good joint mobility as well. So a lot of people emphasize having good flexible body parts, but but definitely flexibility is good, but more mobility is more important, and that's where I shifted towards. And
mm,
just to explain the distinction there, flexibility is
mm,
where you can, put your leg over your head. You can forcibly do something, but mobility is being able to do it with actively. So
mm.
that's slowly raising your leg up, or Coach Nick, when you do your headstand and coming up. So having working on my mobility, and I was able to do it then as well, was really important. And
Mm.
it was such a good
Is
environment to do it at.
is that about the time you started doing your ankle mobility routine and becoming
Yes.
unfoot lockable, bro?
Yeah.
If there are people here who are listening and haven't trained with Coach Ari, even people who are very good at footlocks will hold on to this man's ankle and try to snap it, and there's just no visible reaction in Ari at all. I've never seen him tap to one. I remember training, and a student asked Ari, when was the last time, I think it might have been myself, asked Ari, when was the last time you tapped to a footlock, and Ari couldn't even remember. So, there you go. You need to tell everyone your ankle mobility routine, bro.
Well, I'll ignore my cute socks, but you've got to give yourself foot locks and things like that. But I'm really happy. I'm really happy you brought that up, because something that I learned as a blue belt was the idea of invisible jiu-jitsu, right? So when someone puts me in a foot lock, I'm not going to show reactions. I'm going to keep that poker face. I'm going to be. I don't want to give a tell, right? I want to stay like nothing's happening.
Like Professor Pedro when he's training.
Exactly, and that's where I learned it from, that idea of invisible jiu-jitsu.
That's it.
So yeah, there's 2 points there. So
Are you telling me maybe I did get close with that footlock?
Bro, well, yeah, man, maybe 95%.
Alright,
you're not gonna know.
I'm gonna die wondering. Let's continue with the questions. Sash, this I think perhaps he was asking about your training in Japan. Did they build cardio? Was cardio training done through drills training primarily?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah, definitely all through drills. We did really long sets of like 100 sets, 200 sets of planks, 1-2s, 2-3s, where you try to pass the guard and come back. A lot of the things that we do in the beginning of those classes, where you do the forward rolls, you do the side hip escapes, the hip escapes. We would do that as well. So a lot of those drill techniques. I would come to a class and not even knowing what we're going to do, and you'll be like, oh, today we're going to do 2 hours of this one drill. I'm like, great.
Yeah.
Let's build the cardio today.
That's it.
Yeah. And then I definitely try to build the cardio outside the gym as well, which was good.
Asking about cardio again, Anthony Chiaris wanted to know, do you do any workouts specific to building cardio, or just more jiu-jitsu? I'm not quite sure if he's asking about Japan or now, or
So when I was in Japan, I started to do lots of long distance running, and of course I started to cycle. So yeah, I definitely try to supplement that training, because I'm the biggest advocate of jiu-jitsu. I love the stuff, but you know me. But I think jiu-jitsu, because it's particularly, I don't think jiu-jitsu and improving cardio go hand in hand, in my opinion. I think there's some sort of diminishing return. You'll improve that kind of cardio doing jiu-jitsu, but I think you need some sort of supplement outside the gym to really take it to the next level.
It's also true, if you get really good at jiu-jitsu, ideally you're not burning energy, right? How's that going to affect cardio? Yeah.
Exactly. The idea of jiu-jitsu is to minimize the movement. That's a great point. Like to minimize the movements and
Mm.
to really use solid techniques. So, and yeah,
That's it.
so
The news no one
definitely,
wanted to hear. You just have to go do cardio.
yeah.
Another question. This is from a YouTube user. So I can't see
Love it.
their name. It just says Westron Ham One. I don't know if that means something to you,
That's my
Ari.
mate. Actually, he went. That friend of mine visited the gym with me for the very first time back in 2013. It was
Ah,
me,
okay,
him, and
okay.
my other mate. So
This is
yeah,
the dojo you mean?
yeah.
Yes,
We all
yes.
three of us went together.
And
Yeah.
were perturbed by that peculiar environment, perhaps. His question is, loved hearing about your experiences, Ari. Keen to hear how the various lockdowns have affected your motivation and discipline when it comes to training.
That's a really good question as well. I'm not gonna lie, it's been hard. As everyone knows who practices jiu-jitsu, it's hard to
Mm,
keep motivated, to keep engaged, but just keep like always doing something, right? If it's just like if it's working on your mobility strength, if it's like working on like particular drills, if it's like even if you have like a pillow, like working on your bellies, just always keeping in that mindset of when I'm back on the mats, I'm not going to lose a step,
mm, mm,
and just keeping that in the mind. It's hard and
mm,
it's a sucky situation, but always working towards making your jiu-jitsu better, and that's kind of where I'm going.
mm.
Just thinking when I'm back on the mats, I know that I'm not going to lose that motivation, and I'm stubborn as well, so I think at this point like I'm in for the long haul as well. So I might as well, work,
Yeah,
keep it up.
yeah, that's it. Man, stubborn. Maybe that's why you don't tap to footlocks. Alrighty, guys, if you have
Well,
any more questions, slam them in. Otherwise, we're going to say our goodbyes. I've got one more question for you, Ari. I tend to ask
yeah.
this of everyone that comes and sits for an interview. If you had maybe two questions here. One is, what do you think is the number one thing jiu-jitsu has given you in your life? And I don't mean obviously an ability to do a hip escape or a break fall. I don't mean jiu-jitsu skills. I mean the other maybe slightly less tangible elements of jiu-jitsu that affect our personalities and our conceptions of self and thing. What has jiu-jitsu given you, do you think, if you had to pick one thing to talk about or to like broadcast to everyone here?
Oh man, I think it was said really well last week in the podcast that you can use jiu-jitsu as an analogy for anything.
Mm, Shout
And
out
I
Professor
remember,
Braulio Estima and
shout
his
out
metaphors.
Professor Barnes. And I think what jiu-jitsu has given me is that idea of community. I said at the beginning of the this podcast, right, that we've got to interview communities on
Mm,
here, and that idea of a community that everyone's working together to help each other. And something that I particularly learned in Japan was that the jiu-jitsu, like, it's so amazing because like it kind of transcends so many barriers and differences between people.
mm,
And like there's a focus of that common interest that we all share. And like that love and that passion that we have for the martial arts that we train. So it's been such a interesting and amazing feeling to be part of so many communities where you can just walk in and being like, we both share this common passion. Can I join? And they're like, absolutely. Like, you'll never get turned away from the gym.
yeah.
And it's just been amazing just to have that feeling of inclusion and involvement. And I guess one of the takeaways from that is that confidence that I've developed within the mats to, you know, being motivated to show what you can do and showing how you can express yourself
Mm,
in a forum. It's a martial art. It's an art,
mm,
and in art we create something beautiful, and that's what we're doing on the mats every day.
mm. Powerful words, Coach Ari Gorney. Very good. Alrighty, the last one, the last question, the parting shot. Before we wish each other good night, what would you say is your like number one piece of advice? Maybe to young Coach Ari, beginning at the start. Although by all accounts, looks like you've done everything right, sir. You're doing great on
No,
your
no,
jiu-jitsu journey. But
no, no,
to maybe
no.
to other students who are new to jiu-jitsu and perhaps
Yeah,
perturbed by this lockdown, what would you say to them?
so I think especially when you're like when you're training, when you're starting out, something that I really a nice message that someone told me. I think you might have met Coach Sahan. Maybe you remember him?
Sahan McBerry? Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like one of the first people we met at GB Bondi. I remember he said something to me as a white belt was really important. And I think it's like just setting those little goals for yourself. Like you're not going to go from 0 to 100 overnight, but you can set these little goals. So an example, like you might be rolling against someone and they just tap you 100 times. And then you're like, don't use that as a demotivating tool, being like, okay, well, I'm going to go back tomorrow and that guy's only going to tap me 50 times. And then the next day he's going to go and tap me 30 times, 20 times. And you just set these mini goals for yourself because you feel like you're accomplishing something. You feel like you're getting something from jiu-jitsu as well. So I would say one piece of advice is setting those like small goals that you can accomplish. And and don't burn yourself out too early because at the end of the day, we all want to do jiu-jitsu until we're 80, right?
Yeah.
And so definitely don't burn yourself out so you can continue. Shout out to my man, Steve Maxwell, one of my heroes as well. He's doing jiu-jitsu, he's 68. Damn. He's amazing. You remember, he's been, would definitely 68. Shout out to that guy. 68, still doing jiu-jitsu, one of the first black belts who started a gym in the USA. I'm sure he resonates with a few people.
Wow. I know Professor Pedro in his interview described the same type of thing when he was training, right? Like turn up and try not to get submitted by that guy as many times until the day comes when you get one back. Alrighty. Well, look, I think that's it. Ari, man, I love you to death, bro. It's been as much of a pleasure as I expected having you on, maybe more. I'm glad so many people got to hear you talk about jiu-jitsu with passion on our Friday night. So thank you for bringing all that positive energy to us, brother.
Yeah, and before everyone jumps off, thank you so much for coming. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to listen to these two little like cubs like ramble on for an hour. Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. Hope to see everyone very soon and get some rolls in.
That's it. Fingers crossed. We're all smashing each other on the mats again soon. Fantastic.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, GB Colton, Professor Rodolfo, Jess.
Thank you so much. That was awesome, man.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Yes, thanks everyone for coming to watch. All our friends listening on YouTube as well. Thanks for tuning in. Have a lovely evening and a lovely weekend, my friends. See you next time.
Valeu.
Valeu. Terrific.
Thank you.
Valeu, Pedro.